We stood with our backs pressed against the cold wall, afraid to make even the tiniest of sounds. The chittering grew louder. Ants, each one dwarfing us in size, moved in a single-line procession. I peeked around the corner. Each ant was as big as a horse, and carrying a large white rock the colour of quartz. We stayed there, not daring to breathe, not daring to move. Minutes felt like hours before they had finally disappeared. As we stepped out from behind our impromptu hiding spot and looked out over the expanse in front of us, I could feel a pit of fear in my stomach. The wall we hid behind was metal, stretching out the long hard ground, ending in a peculiar bump. Edith yelped in surprise, and the rest of us turned to see what she was looking at. First it appeared to be an odd-shaped rock, but then it dawned on us, one by one. It was a pumpkin seed, much bigger than even Tom, the tallest in our group. We looked past it, and more were scattered out as far as we could see. The ground, wood. The light in the sky, a giant flame encased in glass and metal. "Jenny," I turned to my friend, and saw her face turn bright red. "Did you mix up the baking soda with the shrinking powder again?"
Welcome to GMspiration, your one-track level to the finest inspiration this GM has to offer.
GMspiration is brought to you by Thompson's Shrinking Powder, the only powder strong enough to shrink other shrinking powders.
Hello and welcome. Size is one of the easiest ways to turn the normal into the strange. Ants are particularly common in this trope, with the 1954 movie Them featuring irradiated ants in the New Mexico desert and the rush to stop two queens from setting new colonies in LA. In this movie, we have creatures increased in size, but we also have plenty of examples of people being shrunk and experiencing the world from an entirely new vantage point. The 1865 book, Alice in Wonderland, features a drink that shrinks Alice and a cake that makes her grow. Further back, we have the 1726 Gulliver's Travels, where Gulliver travels to a place where he is giant compared to the locals, and then another where he is tiny and the locals giants. Slightly after that, we have Jack and the Beanstalk in 1734, although the size difference is not quite as large as modern versions. Much more recently, we have the 1952 novel The Borrowers, about a family of tiny people living in the walls of an English house that borrow from the normal-sized people. If this sounds familiar, it has several adaptations, including the 1999 movie of the same name, and the 2010 Studio Ghibli film The Secret Life of Arity, also known as Arity the Borrower, and simply Arity. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the 1989 movie Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, where an inadvertent shrinking ray hits a bunch of children. The result is a journey of peril across the most dangerous of environments, the front lawn. So, let's break all these down into some usable components. First, changing the size can turn the mundane into the fantastical. A patch of lawn becomes an overgrown forest. A carpet becomes a field of long grass. And a bowl of cereal, a lake. Second, it can add or remove power from those affected. Shrinking someone can make the normal into a deadly challenge. An enlarged creature can take it from a nuisance to a deadly threat. Giant rats, giant bats, and giant insects.
Oh my.
In the 2005 King Kong movie, the explorers of Skull Island fall into a pit of giant bugs. What follows is an intense scene of all sorts of giant insects, crustaceans, and worms swarming the group, and some rather gruesome deaths. Lastly, the smaller or bigger the size change, the more extreme the experience. In Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the children are so small they are not loud enough to speak to their father, being around the size of a fingernail. Compare that to Arity, where she is able to freely talk to a normal-sized person. In fact, Arity is about the size of a hand for a normal person, and the kids in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids are about the size of Arity's hand. Okay, we have our examples, we have how they can be used. Let's throw this against some common fantasy scenarios and see what sticks. Firstly, Fetch Quest. The party are sent to retrieve an item, the Amulet of MacGuffin. It has been stolen by some local thieves and taken only a few blocks away from the quest giver. A short trip down rainy cobblestone roads, around some refuse, and into the creaky, run-down house. A few thugs defeated, and the Amulet of MacGuffin retrieved. Easily done, right? The party grab the amulet, and... wait, why is the room growing? The party shrinks down to the size of a fingernail. Now they have to make their way back to the quest giver, but the mundane things they ignored on the way become challenges. The creaky floor, a vast broken field with holes and cracks to scale, the refuse outside, mountains of rotting food and scraps, rats the size of elephants to fight, the cobblestone streets, torrential rivers and slippery rocks. In fact, I think I might actually write this up as a one-shot. Next, the extermination. The party are asked to exterminate some rats that have been plaguing the sewers. Shops and houses are complaining. The local quest giver is concerned that the rats might cause a plague, or perhaps even something worse. The quest giver warns the party that in rare cases a rat king might appear. This dog-sized rat is smarter and leads the other rats. The party sets out, travelling into the sewers and fighting a few swarms. When they track down the rat's nest, they find something unexpected. A rat, gigantic in size and feasting on all manner of things collected by the other rats. Chief among these are bags stitched with the local merchant's shop emblem. It seems the Rat King has been feasting on potion ingredients, and the recent obsession with potions of growth has inadvertently led the rat to more than tripling in size. Now they must fight a rat that is able to burst through walls, chase them up onto the street, and burst through buildings. Next, the infiltration. The party are asked to sneak into a hideout of local cultists and disable a ritual while the authorities lead a direct assault. To help them, they are provided with shrinking potions, changing their size down to that of a mouse. The party make their way through the cultist base, sneaking through the space between walls, darting across hallways, until they reach the ritual. From there, they need to plant the explosive runes in the circle while the cultists attempt to catch them. In a Tom and Jerry-esque fight, they plant the runes, detonate them, and save the day. Now these, of course, can be altered. Perhaps the infiltration is into a castle of giants. The extermination might be of a different creature, perhaps the most terrifying of all, a giant goose. Remember, where the honk is heard, only death follows. Lastly, I wanted to remind you of some of the less thought out changes when it comes to size. While real-world physics often gets in the way of a good story, it can also serve as inspiration. One of the reasons why insects are able to fall further than humans without being hurt is explained by the square-cube law. This law states, as something's surface grows, its volume increases faster. For example, if you double the size of a 1 inch by 1 inch square block, you have a 2 inch square block, but you can fit 8 1 square inch blocks inside one 2 square inch block. Even though you have doubled the length and height, you have multiplied the volume by 8. As a result, if something is half the size, its volume is 1/8. Halve it again, it's 1/64. Halve it again, and the volume is 512th the original. Following this math, a human that was 5 centimeters tall, or 2 inches, would weigh 2.7 grams, or 0.1 ounce. So what does all this math mean? Well, basically, if you shrink someone, they can fall from a relatively higher height than a normal-sized human. It also means that if you made insects bigger, they might break their legs simply by walking around. But let's ignore that part. To summarize, when messing with size, don't limit your imagination. Giant creatures and giant environments. Messing with size can turn the mundane fantastical and allow you to experience a whole new perspective. Pun intended. That wraps up this episode of GMspiration. Thank you for listening, and remember to have fun.